Hello everybody, it's Kirsty again. You know me, I look at crimes and missing people etc. through the lens of astrology, criminal astrology or forensic astrology. Part 2 of the Susan and Joshua, the children. This one we're going to skip forward, so you'll have to watch the whole lot. We're going to skip forward and we're going to backtrack. There's so much information in this case, and if you've been looking at the last 2 videos, you'll see that I've got mapping underway with the help of Q, who is my uncle. He's not my uncle. He's not my uncle. Q on the comments. Thank you so much. We are seeing things that are pretty amazing, and I'm going to put together another Susan Powell search map 1.2 that hones in way closer to some other specific areas that astrologically are really interesting. Okay, today we're going to look at Joshua's double murder and suicide. On the 5th of February 2012, it was a Sunday. He was given supervised custody, which he should not have had, but he did. At 12 midday, the children were taken to his house. By 18 minutes past 12, the house was completely exploded in flames. He was dead and the children were dead. It turns out that he went to court on the Wednesday prior, the 1st of February, and I have that chart here as well, which determined that he was not going to see his kids anymore. He made a decision that day, I believe, to kill his children and himself. Alright, so a little rundown, because we're sort of at the end of it now, where Joshua kills himself and kills the 2 boys. But on the 1st of February, which was the Wednesday, he did that on a Sunday. He had visitation rights every Sunday, believe it or not. But on the Wednesday, he had a court date. This is the chart, and the court date determined that he was not going to have his kids. That's what made him flip his switch and decide to kill the kids. Now, there's a lot of time, obviously, between 2009 in December when Susan went missing and 2012. The boys are a lot older. There's a whole lot of things that happened in between, and like I said, I will backtrack and go over that. But I think it's important to sort of look at the beginning and the end and then sort of gather as we go. Anyway, this is the chart for the court date, and already it looks pretty horrifying. Everyone that knows charts and my work will know that 29 degrees there, 29 degree moon, a 29 degree Saturn, a 29 degree Neptune, a 29 degree MC, and a 29 degree IC. So how critical is this court case? It is absolutely critical. That's 29 degrees for you. It's critical. Everything lays on the line because of this. So not only do we have the angles at this critically awful position, 29 Pisces, 29 Virgo, 29 Gemini, the end of the matter, 2 boys, 2 people. The MC is 29 Sagittarius. Then we have Saturn, which is a son of a bitch at 29 degrees of Libra. Neptune is sitting in its own 12th house, so it's delusional. 29 degrees of Aquarius. 29 degrees of Aquarius. 29.55. It's teetering. The moon, 29 degrees of Taurus in the second house. Instantly that shows me that he believes that the children, because this court case is about the children, he believes the children are his property. That's the second house in Taurus. And he believes it to the point where it's like, well, if I can't have them, nobody will have them. That's a second house, 29 degree Taurus moon in an event chart like this. The ruler of him himself is none other than Jupiter, as in the other charts. And I think we're going to find, going through all of this, that Jupiter represents Joshua Powell. So Jupiter's at 2 degrees of Taurus in the first house. It's all about him. It's opposing that Saturn. Look at that. Gross. It's all about him and the court, which is this. Better give him what he wants, because he's critically angry and he will kill somebody. Saturn. So the 7th house represents court. It's in Virgo, so it is represented by Mercury. The best interest was for the children. One more thing that I can see really quite clearly, two things that I can see clearly that made him lose it at that point. Uranus conjunct that 29 degree ascendant. Uranus is explosions and sudden events. He was angry, and I mean really angry. That's 1 degree of Aries, fire. He was so angry he was going to blow something up, and that's exactly what he did. The other thing is Mars. Mars is anger as well. Well, it can be our anger. It's at 22 degrees, and it is opposite Venus here at 22 degrees. Okay, so I know there's a lot going on here, but these two being opposite, Venus to me is like is virtually Susan in the 12th house, hidden. He's got all of this stuff going on in his head. What's hidden, what he knows, what the kids know, what everybody knows. And it's activated with this angry Virgo Mars, which is a critical Mars as well. It's a thinking man's Mars, really. Although he made an absolutely disgusting, terrible decision, he's made this decision based on what's going on in his messed up head, obviously. Now, if we look at this 12th house, which is really very representative of him, this whole thing here, whoop, there's a lot in there. Neptune, 29, like I said, delusional. Chiron, the wounded healer, is conjunct Neptune. He thinks he's going to heal himself by killing himself and the kids. I think he thought that he's going to meet back up with Susan. Yeah. That ain't going to happen. Okay, so I know that's a little messy, but that gives us a really good indication that when he was in court, things didn't go well. It was all far too angry with all these 29 degrees. And then if you can see through all of this, I'll get rid of it. Have a look at this. Uranus, the exploder. The moon, the explosive 29 degree moon, a finger of fate or a finger of God. It is pointing to the 29 degree, 29 minute Saturn, which is death. So explosions. Okay, so, and then to top it all off, the ruler of him, which is Jupiter is right in the middle of here. So it's forming like a mini kite between, I don't know if that is actually an aspect, should be, like the midpoint between the finger of God pointing to death, and there he sits at the hand, at the control. He was going to do this from this day on. It was planned from this point. And I would also have to say that he'd thought about it many times before. Okay, let's have a look at the chart for when the children entered the house and the person that took the children to the house called 911. Thanks to the podcast Cold, which was fantastic, by the way, I got some very, very precise times for all these scenarios and events that happened. When we can get exact times, it shows exact situations and directions, mileage. It is the best possible outcome to get the exact times. Okay, now I know this one looks a bit of a mess, but this is 12:08 p.m. when the supervisor, the lady that took the boys to Joshua's house, called 911. So I've got people working in the street, so you may hear some things. I do apologise. All right, here we go. So as I said, it's a bit coloured in here, but I'll grab a different colour. Yellow. Okay, the ascendant is the two boys. The lady is there dropping them off, but the boys are going into their dad's house. So this entire chart is an event. The boys are walking into their dad's house, have just walked into their dad's house. Something's not right, and she's called 911. So here's the two boys, Gemini, ruled by Mercury up there. So that's why that red line's there. So there's the boys, Mercury. Now this MC, which is an angle, is at 12 degrees of Aquarius, and Mercury is at 15. So we've got 12 here and 15 with Mercury. So it's close to the angle, and as we know, angles are dangerous. The 4th, the 7th, the 10th, and the 1st. So, as predicted and thought, the perpetrator is here and ruled by Jupiter, as we thought. So Joshua Powell is represented by Jupiter. It's in the 12th house, the hidden 12th house, and not only that, it is in Taurus, which is intercepted. See these red lines here? The whole of Taurus is hidden inside the hidden 12th house. That's like secrets on secrets on secrets. He was planning what he had in his mind, his subconscious thoughts, everything, all the rubbish, all the crap that goes on in the 12th house. He's right there and thinking about what he's going to do. And what he's going to do is not only blow up the house with him and the boys inside, but he actually hatcheted up the boys as well. So he didn't just blow them up, he also used a weapon and tried to cut them up. Now, that weapon is ruled by Mars at 22 degrees. That same Mars we saw before. Now, interestingly to me, the sister, Alina, now I know that she wasn't involved. She Well, I don't know, she wasn't involved, actually. I shouldn't say that. But she was sort of on the outside. Now, there's been mention of a couple of different things. First of all, there's two people, Jenny and Kirk. Little Charlie mentioned those two people in his interviews. Jenny is Jenny Graves. Jennifer Graves is his sister. Then Alina. Now, I've seen a few people say that Alina possibly knew what happened because she was receiving emails Sunday morning. This morning, he sent emails to his sister saying, goodbye, sort out all my affairs, blah, blah, blah. Now, that connection between Mars and Venus and Uranus, which is the explosion. So we've got the weapons, okay, weapon, and then we've got a female. So I'm trying to figure out here, because the female's at 27 degrees of Pisces in a water sign, but it is conjunct Uranus at 1 degree of Aries. Even though they're in different signs, they're conjunct each other because it's only 4 degrees apart, so they're close enough. Now, that to me indicates, well, my mind and my heart is saying that she knew something was going to happen. Being Pisces, it's intuitive, sense the undercurrent of situations, and that possibly some of the things that he used or got may have been from her. But that's just possibly. Okay, now the moon co-rules the boys and the situation, basically co-rules the boys. So it's at 20 degrees of Cancer. So that's them running. You could literally see them running into the home. Okay, now what we notice here is it's on the 3rd house cusp of communication. So the phone call to the police. She's on the phone to the police, this lady, begging them to come and help because the kids are in the home, locked in the home with the dad. Police aren't taking it seriously. The emotion in her voice it's awful. And that's the Cancer. It's like the mother comes out in her. She knows something is going to go wrong. And then when we move along to this here, Leo, at the end of the matter, that's fire. That's the explosion. She knew, she could smell gas. That's this. Now, interestingly, before we had Neptune at 29 degrees. Now it's at 0 degrees of Pisces. It actually moved sign within the day. So to him, well, the explosion worked for starters. Neptune is like a diffuser. So when it's at 0 degrees, it's not as angry and it's not as volatile as it was at 29 degrees. So it has lost its volatility, but it tends to diffuse the situation, which is not good in this instance because it wasn't diffused. So it's just diffused his mind. Basically, it's his mind just going, that's it, I'm losing it, I'm out of here, this is the end. And it's all in the 10th house of what the world sees. So we see the little boys, their little bodies and souls being taken away. The insanity of Josh Powell with Neptune. We're seeing all of this in this 10th house here. That's the public. People from the public can see what's going on in the 10th house. So that's the 911 call. Oh, and also, of course, Saturn, which is the bodies in the house. Now, they're not deceased right now, but they are still physical bodies in a house. And Saturn is also the male authority, so another Josh Powell representative in the chart there, at 29 degrees of Libra. There's no more diplomacy for him. Libra's about being diplomatic and fair and all those things. That went out the window in the court date. So diplomacy, not at 29 degrees of Libra. Into the 6th house of health. So the only thing that he knows how to do is do what he did. At this point, teetering authority figure that he was, angry. I mean, that's also in opposition with Jupiter, which is him too, so it all links up. Has moved into the 6th house where health is no longer an issue. He wants to die and wants to take the boys with him. Not only that, sorry about all the banging there, the 6th house contains DNA, so the evidence, obviously, it was all within the house. The part of fortune is in that 6th house. It's not fortunate, obviously, in this instance. The north node, the fated point, is in the 6th house. So those children, so sadly, were never going to walk out of there healthy, and that's shown by this. Now, one last thing on this chart is that if the dispatcher knew astrology, that would be fantastic. If he knew astrology and had the phone call at this time, he would have seen that Capricorn and Pluto are in the 8th house of death, right here. And that means that there's a death, it's tragedy is coming. And Pluto, along with Uranus, which is making an aspect to, by the way, those two, those together are very explosive indeed. So the 8th house of death and the 9th house covered with Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn at 29 degrees. So the 8th house of death is Saturn. The bodies, the end result was going to be shown. This is why if we used astrology more like this, it would be amazing. If I was a dispatcher and I received a call, and I could, because I know you have to, it takes, all of your might, but if I had a chart next to me at that time as well, I am sure that I would know exactly how urgent it was, and the phone call or the way that dispatcher spoke to the lady would not have happened. He was a belligerent smartass, saying that there were emergencies that came before this. She was screaming, "This is an emergency. I think they're going to die." And then the explosion happens while he's on the phone. That happens all too often. Okay, so I'm sorry about that nightmare chart, but I think I showed you everything there. So let's move along. This tiny little blip of a chart, which I will enlarge and show you, is the blast, the explosion at 12:16 p.m, just after lunchtime. So it's when the lady that dropped off the children had reversed her car out of the driveway because she could smell gas, and 12:16, bang, the explosion happened. Now, we can see that it's not really much different from the prior one, but there are a few differences, and it actually makes all the difference, really, believe it or not. So, the ascendant is the boys, as the last time, and, the victims. Now it is at 15 degrees. Okay. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, so that represents the boys, 2 boys, Gemini's 2, always 2, and Mercury is at 15 degrees. So the ascendant, so the physical bodies of the children, are in exact trine to the planet that represents them. Whereas before there was 3 degrees difference. So it's a build-up, and this is what happens with charts. When we get closer in degrees to the ruling planet, so we were looking at Mercury before, when we get closer in aspect like this, so we have 2 figures at 15 degrees, that means the act of whatever is going to happen happens then. So it was a build-up before, when the police were being called. He was preparing, pouring gasoline, hatcheting, doing all those awful things. And then at 15, Mercury, the boys were killed, and him. Now the MC as well, so that angle is now at 14 degrees. So really close. It's actually less than 1 degree away from Mercury. So right there, they're on the angle and in the public eye. Now, perpetrator we know is him, and again he's ruled by Jupiter in that 12th house. And the opposition to Saturn is now closer to that 6th house cusp. So the 6th house cusp, which is this one, is a really pivotal point for the 6th house. So it's the beginning of the end of their health. So before he was thinking, this is it, I'm going to kill them, I'm going to kill myself. When it happened, Saturn is exactly on the doorway of the house of health. So that's really all that has changed. Neptune is still at 0 degrees, so the volatility of Neptune being at 29 degrees before had waned by this point, because anything at 29 degrees is just not right. It doesn't think right in these type of charts. It doesn't think right, act right, speak right. Everything's wrong when we have 29 degrees in planets like that. So it's moved into Pisces, it's at 0, and it's like, this is my new beginning. Death. That was his goal, represented there. So again, Pluto is in the 8th house of death, and it is closer to the cusp. So in the same instance as the 6th house, Pluto has also moved a little closer to the cusp of the 8th house of death. Now, the end of the matter is still in Leo, which is fire, but it's at 14 degrees, making a 1-2 sextile, that is, so 30, 60 degrees between these two. So at this point in time, it's a positive aspect between the end, the womb and the tomb, and the boys. Obviously it's not a positive situation. So when we see positive aspects like sextiles or trines in bad situations like this, it shows us that the event was successful. So he successfully killed those boys exactly how he wanted and for the reasons he wanted. And he would have been thinking about it before as well, because he knew that Charlie was going to say something one day. I mean, poor little Charlie was actually not coping at all and started to threaten to kill other people, other things, and say some pretty scary things for a child. So it's obvious that Charlie knew what happened to his mum. Now, little Charlie gave a lot of clues. So I've been looking into all of those clues. He said he saw flowers and berries, red berries, and that his father told him that if you killed a bear, this is odd, I know, but he said, if you kill a bear, you kill it and put it in a hole and throw rocks at it, then put wood in there and a tree with red berries, because that way the berries are the sweetest. In my research, I have found that in all of the areas that he went to and was from, red elderberries are very prominent, and the flowers they produce are exactly as described by Charlie. Now, there is an area where they have those flowers, those berries, and topaz or geodes, so the crystals. I believe the North Pole that he mentioned was to do with the movie The Santa Claus that they watched earlier on, which was embedded into him over and over by Joshua. So the next video I'm going to backtrack and start going over Charlie, what he said, and the charts for more of it, so we can see a bigger picture of what happened, leading up to the last chart and map, which is going to be very, very specific as to where I would search for Susan, knowing now that I've got much more specific times on all of these instances. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching this one, and see you in part 3. Bye.